Okay, so what I wanted to go over today is making you understand a little bit about lighting and how lighting in a 3D program works. It's one of the things that confuses students a little bit. We, as a normal human being, we realize that what happens is that light comes down and it hits the surface and it skates across the surface, and that's what makes us see it. Okay, and that's what happens in reality. Okay, but in a 3D game and in a 3D environment, that's not what's happening. What happens is the vertices are lit. The surfaces are not lit. The vertices are lit. Light hits the vertices, and then it averages from one vertex to another to figure out how to light the surface. Okay, so here I have two different pieces of geometry. And this is one I get from people a lot of times where they're trying to optimize their geometry to have as few polygons as possible for a low poly. And that's correct. That's what you want to do. However, if we understand that light is coming to a vertex, what we want to avoid is a pole like this where we have all of these faces coming to this one point. So this is lighting all of these with one piece of information. Now, a good way to kind of visualize this is if I pick both of these. By the way, we can look at this, and I've got the count up here. This has 40 triangles in it. This one has 48 triangles. So this one has more geometry than this one. So if we're grading based on, how much geometry, this one has less. However, it's only 8 polygons difference, but let's look at what the lighting's going to look like. So if we come in here and we put an edit normals modifier on here, then this will show normals, and you can think of normals as being light rays. So what's happening, let's look down here. What's happening is you have a light ray that's coming to this vertex and hitting this corner, and another light ray is coming into this vertex and hitting this. So a vertex has 2 light rays hitting it, one for this polygon and one for this polygon. So what's happening here is this light is hitting here, and it's hitting here, and then it's averaging between them, and that's how it figures out to get the light on there. Okay, same thing. This light's hitting this surface, this light's hitting this surface. They average it to get the lighting across the surface. Now, what's happening here is light's hitting this, and it's hitting this, and it's having an average all the way down this, which means our lighting information is sparse in here, whereas this one has short stenches for its lighting information. And so this one's going to light better inside of the game engine than this one would. Okay, so even though this has less polys, this one lights better, and this is the one that we would want to go for. Okay, now this edit normals, it's just to help us to visualize this. But what's happening here is every one of these vertices has 2 sets of lighting information coming at different angles. All right, I'm going to turn that off. Now, the other thing we have to understand is smoothing groups. Okay, now a smoothing group, an easy way to look at this is from a let's go. We'll make this the current. Okay, is we'll make a sphere. So I create a sphere, and see how it's smooth looking. Even if I come in here and I turn down the amount of geometry that's in here, it's still smooth looking. Now, its silhouette is not smooth, but it's smoothing between the pieces. If I turn this smoothing group off, then it'll be faceted. So a smoothing group is when you have 2 faces that come together, whatever the angles between them, you're telling the machine, we want you to be smooth or we want you to be angular. By default, when you make a sphere, it's smooth, but you could tell it to be angular. So we're going to leave it smooth, and I'm going to come in here and put an edit poly modifier on this, And I can change the smoothing group angle. So I can come in here and say select these polys right here. Then I come down into my smoothing groups and I can say, okay, let's give this an angle of 15 degrees and auto smooth it. And now you're going to see I'm telling it to smooth at a 15-degree angle. So this angle in here is above 15 degrees, so it's smoothing. This angle is below 15 degrees, and so it's getting it angular. So we're setting smoothing groups. Okay, so the smaller the smoothing group, let's go 5 degrees, then everything's going to seem angular, except for up there, I'd have to make a lower smoothing group for that. Okay, but if I want it to be all smooth the way it was when we would make this to be smooth, if we come up with something really high, say 180 degrees, and auto smooth it, then you'll see that it's back to what it was. Everything's smooth. So smoothing group is not to be confused with mesh smooth subdividing, like mesh smooth or turbo smooth. That's subdividing. We're not subdividing here. We're setting the smoothing groups. We want this to render from here to there as smooth and not angular. Now, since we can see this as angular, then we know that this has got smoothing groups. It's got 2 smoothing groups. It's got a smoothing group 1, which is this side and that side, or it's got smoothing group 2, which is this side, and they're divided by an angle. So when we see this angular, that's what's doing it, is a smoothing group. Okay, fine. But what we're going to be doing is baking a normal map. And what we're going to do is we want to be getting the smoothing information from the high poly model, not the low poly model. So what'll happen sometimes if we leave these smoothing groups as they are, and then we get a smoothing group from a normal map from the high poly, they can conflict with each other. So one of the things that we normally do is we come in here, and I'm just going to grab both of these at the same time. I can put an edit poly in here if I want to, but another thing I can do, you can do this 2 ways. You can go edit poly. I can pick all the smooths, all the edges, and then I can say a big, like 180 degrees, and auto smooth it. And now when I turn off the wire, you'll see that'll be smoothed across there. That's one way to do it. Okay, I'm going to dump that edit poly to go back to our... Another way is you can put what's called a smooth modifier on here. And a smooth is... It does the same thing, but that's all that it does. So I can come in here and tell it I wanted a high smoothing group, and now it's going to be nice and smooth. But what you're going to see is, can you see some of these little artifacts in here that you're getting because of that long face that's in there? See how I don't get them in that up there? That's one of the problems of having these long polys like this. Okay, so hopefully that helps you understand a little bit of how to kind of prep a low poly, that before you take it in, that we want more vertices like this. Even though this is more polys, it's not that much more polys. Okay, but it's 8 more polys, but it's going to give me much better lighting information. Okay. Hope that helped you.